So if a person looked up the data in Medscape or MGMA, he would find that a spinal surgeon are paid really well, $750,000 a year or so, and that's on average across the US. From a person within the actual field who is an attending spinal surgery, should be surgeon, are those numbers estimate accurate, or is it only represent the minority of spinal surgeons? In this video today, we're going to dive into that. What's up everyone, my name is Dr. Webb. I'm an orthopedic spine surgeon here in San Antonio, Texas. So this whole physician salary thing is really taboo in the medical field. No one really likes to talk about their salary or how much they make, and even it's kind of personal to me, but I think it's important for those that are interested in going into the medical field, as well as those that are trying to decide which residency to choose. And although money is not everything, I do think you should pay attention to it, especially as the medical school tuition goes up. The average medical student graduates with $250,000, $300,000 in debt. You have to take your choice of career into consideration. So I'm gonna dive into this. I got this question from my Instagram account. Haven't had a chance to respond to the person who sent me this, but I think it's important to talk about. So are these numbers actually real? The numbers that you see out there about how much doctors make, they make all this money, they have these big houses, nice cars, they do really well. Is that actually true? So from someone who's been in private practice for 1 year, I just started my second year in private practice here in San Antonio, Texas, and I just wanted to let you guys know, are those numbers real? Is it really close? Are they really off on these estimates? And what can people kind of generally expect to make? Some disclaimers. I'm not an expert in this. I don't claim to be an expert. This is just my experience of being in medicine for the last number of years, as well as being in private practice for the last year. Also, there's going to be people that are going to
say, oh, I know a nephrologist who makes $3 million per year. Oh, I know a pediatrician who makes $800,000 per year.
Totally fine. I mean, everybody's salary is different depending on your practice type, what part of the country that you're located, if you're in private practice, academics, or an employed position, if you have ownership into your business, if you own your business, if you have other generating forms of income, it would vary. There are some pediatricians who make more than spine surgeons, and there are some spine surgeons who make more than dermatologists. And there are some physicians in the same group, also within the same practice, same specialty. One makes $1 million, the other one makes $250,000 a year. So it varies. But there is this Medscape article that always comes out every year that usually interviews and surveys physicians. So this one is for 2021, the Medscape article that came out, and they asked over 18,000 physicians. So it's really widespread, and over 29 specialties about their income. And as expected, usually always at the top of the list is orthopedics, $511,000. So this is a kind of a median or an average income. Some people made more than this. A lot of people made less than this, but $511,000 for these surveys, and I've mentioned this in other videos, they never include spinal surgery or neurosurgery in this, just because I think they don't get enough responses when they send out these surveys. The neurosurgeons are probably busy operating on brains. They don't have time to respond to these surveys. But plastic surgery is up, 526,000. Third on the list is cardiology at 459, and then you have urology, ENT, radiology. So is this number really accurate? Well, before I answer that, if you go over to salary.com, and this is not something that I would recommend kind of basing your decision or trying to see how much a orthopedic surgeon makes. And they report that the median income, is $500,000. So this is actually not far off from what Medscape reports. The gentleman in the Instagram message also, we mentioned the MGMA, that's the Medical Group Management Association. These are essentially figures kind of across the US about how much, what's the average pay for a physician. So I don't have that data just because it was kind of hard to kind of get into their system, but it essentially would show around $500,000. So the Medscape was a 511, the salary.com was 500,000, and then the MGMA would depend on what part of country that you're in, what your practice type, and all those things. So there's a lot of things that come into play. So the question is this number accurate? And I'm not going to talk about the average for a spine surgeon. It varies. There's some figures out there if you Google the salary of a spine surgeon, but I think orthopedic surgeon is kind of more something more easily to talk about in terms of salary. And just because I have a large percentage of my practice that is orthopedics, I do take general orthopedic trauma calls, so I do see patients with general orthopedic complaints as well. Is this number accurate? I would say this number, yes and no. So $500,000, this is a 50% medium on salary.com. Is this number pretty accurate after being out in practice for the last year? One caveat is that COVID has definitely impacted the salary and compensation of physicians across the board. The numbers that are reported now may not represent what they were pre-COVID, so 2019, 2018, 2017. So the most physicians have seen a decline in their salary, although there are some physicians that have seen an increase. So across the board, most physicians have seen a decrease in their salary. Before I answer is this number pretty accurate, there are a couple different ways of practice models that physicians can join once they leave your training. And I've made other videos about this. I'll put that right up here. But real quickly, a physician can go into an employed position, which means you work for a hospital essentially, and the hospital pays you a salary, or they can pay you based off of what's called productivity. The more work that you do, the more patients that you see, the more surgeries or procedures that you perform, the more your salary will be. But most of the employed positions, if you think about being an employee at a hospital, this is usually a salaried position. And then there's private practice. Private practice, either you join a group of other physicians who have their own business, or you start your own business essentially in medicine. And it's, for most people, are kind of eat what you kill. This is essentially the more surgeries, the more patients, the more procedures that you do, the more diagnostic tests, those things, the more you will get paid. And then there is academics, which means you work at a university or some type of setting where you're teaching medical students, residents. You get this appointmentship, which like clinical professorship, and that's usually salaried as well, but there are some productivity incentives to work at an academic center. So the salary will depend on your practice type, what part of the country that you're in, and also your specialty. So this number, $500,000, I do believe this number is pretty accurate. Being out in practice for the first year, most orthopedic surgeons, depending on what part of the country that they're in, are around that kind of range. But if you're fresh out of practice, especially in private practice, you have to build your practice. That takes time. Just like if you started a business, it's going to take time to generate your practice, your clientele, your patients, and to generate this much money. It may take 2 to 3 years, sometimes 4 years. There are some surgeons that go out and practice and they get busy really quickly, and they can make $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 per year. There are some other surgeons who are kind of maybe on the 25th percentile or the 10th percentile first starting off. So essentially it takes time to build up your practice, and these numbers that you see are kind of the surgeons that are kind of well established, that have been in practice for a while. This is what they generate from their practice. But there's other ways to generate income. If you're in private practice, you can generate what's called ancillary income. This is like your physical therapy, any braces that you sell, anything that you sell that's in your office, any investments in surgery centers or other investments as a surgeon. Those generate income, and sometimes those generate more income than your actual salary as a physician or surgeon. And if you're an employed position or academic, sometimes those things are kind of limited or restrictive, so you have to read your contract really carefully. But in general, I do think these numbers are pretty accurate in terms of orthopedic surgeons that are out in practice. But the caveat is that, before COVID, and also once you establish or build your practice. So coming out of training, you may make $200,000 your first year, maybe $300,000 your second year. You may bump up to $600,000 your third year as you get busier and as you build your practice. So I hope this is helpful for you guys. Don't get me wrong, you should not go into medicine for the money, but I do think it's something that is not talked about enough, and I do think it's something that you should consider when you're trying to choose your specialty. There are wide variations of different pay rates and also salaries across the board. There's some surgeons here in San Antonio that make $2 million per year. There's other ones that make $150,000 per year. So depends on a lot of different factors, how busy you are, how many surgeries you do, how many patients you see, what other forms of income that you have. But in general, I do think this $500,000 is pretty accurate. This is Dr. Webb. Thank you for watching this video, and we'll see you next time.